Hey there, spook fans, and welcome to Pajama Nightmares, where we get together each week in our PJs and tell each other scary stories.
We are your hosts, Mack and Ally, and we're back with another round of spine-tingling tales and eerie anticipation. Get ready and snuggle up, because today we're diving into some of Reddit's spookiest stories.
Our first story is called It Wasn't a Little Girl. I was camping with my husband and his friends at a small, remote lake in New Mexico. There were about 10 people in our group and another group with about 6 people in the next campsite. It was nighttime and both groups were doing typical activities, making s'mores, having a few drinks, and telling stories. When all of a sudden, we heard a little girl yelling out for help. Neither group had children with them, but we were all positive we were hearing a little girl, and we decided to search the area we heard the noises from, together. There was a big field behind the campsites, and we all saw a very tall, pure white figure standing maybe 100 feet away from us in the field, crying out like a little girl. We all agreed this thing was maybe 6 feet tall, skinny, and white as can be. We made our way closer to investigate, stupid. But whatever it was we saw started backing up as we got closer, and it disappeared into the trees. We continued to hear a little girl crying out for help for the rest of the night as we tried to sleep. So that's terrifying.
No thanks.
Obviously.
Hard pass on that.
So this is the part where we are going to rate each story on a scale from 1 to 10. 1 being, ooh, spooky, spooky decor, and 10 being like nightmare material. Do not want it. I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10, solely because it cries like a little girl.
For me, I'm going to give that one an 8.5. I'm scared in the woods anyway, and that just adds an extra creep factor. You never know what's out there.
Yeah.
Especially that.
All right.
Okay, so the next story on the docket is called Unrest Stop. I was driving across the country with my mom and sister when I was 16 and my sister was 20. It was late, but we were well rested and still alert. We were driving along the interstate and needed gas and a bathroom break, so we stopped at the only rest stop in 200 miles. There was a van full of teenagers on a road trip at the gas station, as well as a small gray car parked at the pump in front of us with 2 young men standing still outside of it.
Creepy.
Yeah. When we got there, everything felt wrong. We'd been on the road for days and seen many rest stops at night and had never felt afraid until then. My mom and sister went inside and I stayed in the car. I heard the teenagers say they were creeped out and couldn't get the pump to work, and they left in a hurry. I was watching the car in front of us, and the 2 men had not moved at all. Not an inch. They weren't talking, they weren't on their phones. They were just standing there, still as stone.
The fuck?
Yeah. My mom and sister came running back out to the car, and when they got in, the 2 men slowly turned to look at us while not moving or pivoting the rest of their bodies. And I swear to fucking shit, we all saw the same thing.
Is that what it says? I swear to fucking shit.
Yeah. They had eyes as dark as pitch and empty. Truly empty. Not black, not reflecting any light at all.
Ew, like matte eyes?
Just a void.
Blech.
We sped out of there and didn't stop until we were in the next city. The worst thing about the entire experience, we couldn't find that place on a map. We knew exactly which spot on the interstate to look, and we couldn't find it on Google Maps or a paper map. We even asked the locals about the creepy gas station out on that stretch of road and only got confused looks. We traveled on that interstate since. And there's no rest stop.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah.
Alright. That one's pretty fucking creepy.
Yeah.
I give that one at least a 9 for sure. I don't think it's 10 worthy in my opinion. For some reason, but
That's pretty freaky. I think I'm hovering around the 9 mark as well. My question is, why didn't those 2 young men, standing still as stone, do anything when those teenagers were around? You know what I mean? Like, why didn't they look at them? Yeah.
Because they didn't go to the store? Like, what did they see in the store also?
I don't know. That's true.
That one was scary.
Yeah, that's freaky.
This story is called It Came For Us in the Graveyard.
I don't like it already.
That's exactly where you want to hear a scary story. We were driving my friend's really old, beat-up Subaru through a massive graveyard. Sounds like a great idea. Awesome start.
Yeah.
We stopped and walked down the hill and came across a little pond. There was someone sitting on a rock on the other side of the pond. You're already scared. It's just someone on a rock.
Scary stuff.
The figure was all black. Okay, yeah, no.
See?
The figure was all black, and we couldn't make out any features other than the fact it looked like a man who was wearing some old-style top hat. This is who haunted me my fucking whole life.
Oh god. I'm nervous.
We stupidly waved. Yeah, stupidly, already stupid. We stupidly waved and shouted, "Hi!" He didn't show any acknowledgement. These must be guys, because no woman would see a strange, dark-shadowed man and be like, "Hey!
Top of the morning!"
Yeah. He didn't show any acknowledgement and continued sitting on the rock. All of a sudden, he jumped to his feet. He started running to us on the water and then vanished in thin water about halfway on the pond. My friends and I screamed and then ran back to the car. But the car wouldn't start. And we heard something banging on the back of the car. It wasn't a constant bang, but every few seconds we'd hear it. Nobody was outside from what we could see in the dark, but something was making a noise on the car. I opened my phone and started dialing my mom to come give us a boost, but I had no service. None of us had any cell service. The next 30 minutes were spent trying to get her car started. No banging was heard afterward, but we felt this heavy pressure around us. Finally, the car started and she hit the pedal to the metal. We sped out of that graveyard so fast. Immediately crossing the gates, all of our cell phones regained service. One thing I know for certain is that someone or something was out there, and it was not an animal or a human. That one's pretty scary.
That one got me. From the beginning, we saw it.
Yeah, like, okay, I forgot I was in a graveyard halfway through the story, but you're in a graveyard. You walk down a hill of a graveyard. So let's do the one down the street. Like, we're in there, and then all of a sudden there's a little pond. Someone's sitting across the pond. They get up. They go on the water. They sprint to you like fucking Jesus on the water. Disappear halfway through, and then you have no cell service. Your car doesn't work, and you're hearing banging on the back of your car.
For 30 plus minutes.
Not to mention this guy had a fucking top hat.
Ugh. Yeah, nobody wears
10
a
out of
top
10.
hat anymore.
10 out of 10 for me.
Oh man.
That was a good one. I like that one. What was you? Whoa.
Oh, right. That was a good one. That was a good one. That got me from the beginning. We're going with a 10 for
10
that.
10 out of 10, yeah.
Yeah. Now we have a story called It Was Good to See an Old Friend.
Ew, I hate the sound of that already. Because we know it's going to be scary.
Yeah, but in a weird way, it kind of gives me like a, oh, this is going to be nice.
Alright, but
nice
let's
to
see
see
what
an
it
old
says
friend.
first.
When I was 37, I went to my high school reunion. I flew into the nearest airport and rented a car. The distance was about 35 miles, through a very rural and almost abandoned part of the country. About 3 miles outside of town, I see someone on the side of the road flagging me down. It turned out it was one of the guys I had attended school with. Jim, which is not his name, gets into the car and we started talking. I had not seen him in 20 years, but he still looked the same, maybe a little older. We get into town and I ask him if he wants to come to the VFW and have a drink. He says, no, just take me home. Jim's parents had only lived a few blocks from my grandmother's house, and I turned in that direction, but he said to take him to the outskirts of town. There was a mobile home park out there, and I figured that's where he lived. When we reached the end of the turn, he said, "Just drop me off here. It was good to see you again." And then he walks off into the night. I go to the VFW, met some of my old classmates, and we start to talk. As we were talking about who was coming to the reunion, I mentioned that I had picked up Jim 3 miles east of town and had dropped him off. Everyone gets quiet. Even the guy singing karaoke stops and lays the mic down. My cousin goes as white as a new t-shirt.
Jim's dead.
Barb, Jim died on that curve 8 years ago. Rolled his car. We were all at his funeral, I was told. I started to feel really dizzy, and I went out to the car to take some deep breaths. There on the seat is the local newspaper, printed 8 years previous, containing Jim's obituary.
Just in her car?
I still have the paper.
Huh.
Yeah,
The
just
fuck?
on her seat. Explain that. The exact paper that has, I have goosebumps. Call them ghost bumps, because that's ghosty.
Oh my god.
That was freaky.
That's creepy.
Because that was such a vivid interaction, I'm giving that a 10 ski.
A 10 ski. I'm gonna say 9.
You weren't spooked as much?
I was, well, like you said, it wasn't that, because it.
Well, that's true.
That's the thing. But if, if it hit you in a certain way, you can have a 10 if you want to. But for
I'm
me,
scared ghosts.
like I'm scared of ghosts, but it's not gonna be a 10 if it's a friendly ghost. Okay. The next story up is called "Hell Hath No Fury Like a Woman Scorned."
Okay.
Intense. After we moved into our home, we were told a woman had died there at the hands of her abusive husband. She hated men. My dad would wake up with scratches all over him. And whenever my brother was mean to my sister or I, he would have scratches on him as well. One day, my brother hurt our sister. He hit her with something. When we woke up later that night, he had a horrible bloody nose. The day we moved out, my brother accidentally broke his twin's arm trying a wrestling move. He swears that he would have died that night if it wasn't our last night in the house. I give that one like a 4.
Yeah. That one didn't really get me that much. The scratches, that freaked me out for sure.
I feel like there needed to be more about the woman. I needed to know, that she's actually, I wasn't threatened, All right. So what'd you give it out of 10?
I would say a 5. This one's called "Death Came for Him." I was standing in my parents' room, talking to my very sick dad at the time. He was dying of stage 4 esophageal cancer. I got the feeling that something was behind me. I looked towards the doorway to the living room, and something about 4'6" and fully black is peeking around the corner with its hands on the door frame. I ran towards it, and it slipped back around the door. When I got outside the doorway, there was nothing. My dad was completely confused when I stepped back in the room and told him. People who stayed at my dad's house during his final days claimed to have seen it. My mom saw the figure on multiple occasions, in multiple places, until he passed away. We haven't seen it since. Oh. Ugh, it sounds like something came to collect him. Freaky.
Yeah. Didn't freak me out that much, though. 6. 6 out of 10.
Is it because it was little? It gives me it spooked me a little. I'm gonna give that a 7. It was short and sweet, but I don't know. I feel like there's some kind of energetic something or other that opens up when somebody's close to death. I don't know. That feels real.
I guess the story itself didn't really scare me that much. Now we have one called "My Mother Attracted Evil." After my parents divorced when I was a teenager, I lived with my mother. I experienced a lot of paranormal happenings.
Huh, how relatable.
That's weird.
That happened to me, people.
Several times when I was reading in my bed, the book would start to feel really icy.
Huh.
Next, it would feel as if something or someone that hated me was staring at me.
Oof.
When I got that feeling, I would leave the room and come back an hour later. Sometimes during the day, I would see a shadow figure sneaking along the bedroom walls. Wow, it's like my horror and your horror from children's all combined. Something in the flat was pretending to be my dog. Oof, that screams that creepy tale from when we were kids.
Oh my god.
You know the one?
I do know the one.
Ugh, where you look for your hand down, they were licking your hand.
Yep. No thanks.
I went into my room and heard a deep growl from under my bed. My dog wasn't capable of making a noise that deep. It sounded like either a really big dog or a man doing his best dog impression. This is literally that story.
Oh my god.
Other times, my dog would whimper and pace in the room next to mine, but wouldn't come when called, as if he was afraid of something in the hallway. When I moved in with my father, the paranormal activity stopped. That's pretty
What's that
scary.
all about?
I'd say
Yeah.
that one's like at least a 7 for me, just because the fact that like something was under their bed growling at them that they didn't know what it was and it wasn't their pet.
I'm gonna give it a higher score. I'm gonna give that an 8.
Nice.
Because, I mean, the part where they said about that growl, how it could be like, didn't know if it was like man acting as animal or if it was an animal.
Right.
Because that just makes it super real.
And it also has more options like, is it a beast? Is it a man? Or is it
it
a
a man
paranormal
beast?
or paranormal?
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
So like, yeah.
That's a little
So what
tricky.
do you give it? An 8?
Yeah, I gave it an 8.
That was good.
This next one is called Evicted by a Ghost. Shortly after college, I got married. We immediately moved into a basement apartment because that's all that was available within our budget.
Classic.
Yeah, I feel that.
It's supposed to be written in 2023.
Yesterday. It was us. This place had a poltergeist, and my wife was terrified. Whatever resided there with us made it clear it wanted to live alone. Dishes, glasses, and other items would fly off the shelf. My wife was hit several times. There was always an ominous feeling, like we were being watched. At night, when we walked through the apartment in the dark, there would be insanely bright flashes of light that would illuminate the entire room.
That's fucked up.
Like, you can't deny that.
No.
One night, while we were going to bed, as soon as my wife and I had walked into the bedroom, we heard a voice from nowhere say my name, and it told me to move. My wife looked at me. I looked at her. I said loudly, "You've got it, bud." We moved out 2 days later and stayed with family. The old lady who owned the place died a few months later, and the house was torn down. The lot is still empty to this day. It has nothing but grass and a single tree. I still drive by it every now and then.
That was pretty scary.
That one, yeah, like I feel like they could have leaned a little bit into more of like the poltergeistness that was happening.
Yeah, I
Like,
feel like it was a little anticlimactic.
right, like what provoked? Was there anything that you guys did to like make the stuff go off? Was it really truly random? Because obviously it didn't want you guys there. Yeah.
And interesting that they interpreted it saying move as to move out. I was thinking like move your body.
Like move,
a-
bitch, get out the way.
Exactly.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I would give this one a 7. Like it scared me, but the story itself kind of disappointed me.
I actually agree. I didn't actually think it was that spooky. Like, the things that happened were obviously spooky. I'm going to give it a 6, though, because it didn't really get me with the thrill factor.
I like the lights. The lights
Yeah,
got me. Like
that
if all of
was
a
the
sudden
spooky
I was
one.
in pitch black and it was indoor lightning, like
Yeah.
the fuck.
Indoor lightning storm.
All right, our next Reddit story is called The Death March. My dad used to work as a corrections officer in a prison in the middle of nowhere. He drove the perimeter of the property for his entire shift, where he would check empty buildings for runaway inmates. It generally was a boring job. One night, my dad was parked on a hill reading a magazine when he started feeling a thumping in his body. He described it as the feeling you get when speakers are playing a song with a really heavy bass. That's exactly what I was thinking. Interesting. He put down the magazine and checked his rearview mirror, where he saw someone outside the truck. He grabbed his pistol and jumped out of the truck with his weapon drawn. Outside the truck, he realized that it was a procession of indigenous people walking through the truck and directly through his seat, only to disappear at the exact spot where he was sitting. That is creepy. He said it was clear that they were ghosts because many of them appeared injured. Not because they were walking directly through the truck and him and disappearing, but because they were injured. You lost me there a little bit, sorry. This went on for a few seconds, and then the whole procession disappeared. He called the other perimeter guy on his walkie and tried to explain, and the other guy almost immediately stopped communicating. Turns out the other guy had seen this before and didn't believe in ghosts, so he wouldn't talk about it.
Yeah, you gotta talk about this,
Doesn't
man.
even make sense.
Wow.
I would say that one, I don't know.
I'm more interested than anything.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Like, obviously, I would poop my pants if that happened to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. If I put myself in the shoes, yeah, that's freaky. But from the story, I'm like, whoa, interesting historical moment.
7 out of 10. A lot of 7s being thrown around by me today.
What is your favorite number? I'm going to go with a 6. Just because I'm more interested than scared.
Yeah, I'm interested, but also, like, if I was this guy, like, I don't know. I'm scared. But he did lose me when he said that they were ghosts because they were injured, not because they were literally walking through objects.
His literal truck made of metal.
Yeah, like,
yeah.
It would have been better if he was like, it was clear they were ghosts because they were missing body parts and walking directly through objects into my body. Like, terrifying.
Our last story of the evening is called The Demon's Room.
Ooh.
I worked as a forensic nurse in a hospital's lockup unit. We had one older lady who swore she was being haunted and abused by a demon she would call Tiberius. Yeah. So many crazy things happened while she was on the unit. We would go into the room, do normal care, leave, and seconds later, she'd start screaming bloody murder. We'd run into the room to find her looking like she'd been in a fight with a boxing champ. Bloody lip, black eye, marks all over her body. No one ever saw her doing this stuff to herself. Things would get moved around the rooms by themselves. At one point, she was in protective restraints because the doctors thought she was hurting herself. There was no way she could have moved or done anything to herself while in these restraints, but new marks would always appear, or her tray or cart would be across the room. The room was secure, so there was no way someone else was doing this. When we asked her questions, she'd just say, it was Tiberius. After she was discharged, we always had trouble with that room. If there was going to be a rapid response or code, it all happened in that room. One night, a guard reported lights blinking on and off. It was that room.
Creepy.
Yeah.
Man, the ends are always so anticlimactic. Why would they just add that in at the end?
Yeah, I mean, as that type of nurse, I'm sure you'd come across a lot of weird things, especially with, the brain. But if somebody kept telling me it was something, I would look into that. I'd be like, okay, clickety-clack on the internet. What's this all about?
Especially when they're like, oh, we made it impossible for her to be doing these things, but nobody believed what she was saying.
And, oh man, I gotta figure that stuff out. Otherwise, it would drive me nuts.
Especially if you worked there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I wouldn't. Not after that.
I would say 8 out of 10.